us on our phone. People talk to me about, not being able to tolerate, not knowing what that new thing that's coming in on the phone is. I mean, kids sit in class now, and the phone is in the bag or the phone is on the floor, and they check regularly what new texts are coming in.
Do you have boundaries for them? Do you push back?
Every professor knows this. Well, I had a thing in class where the kids, I was teaching a class on memoir at MIT, and it was about these kids' fantastic stories about their lives. And a group of the class came to me and said, we're texting in class, and, we feel bad because the rest of the kids, they're talking about their lives, and I said, well, we have to discuss this as a class. And basically they said, we are not as strong as technology's pull.
What do you mean? What did they mean by that?
They were not as strong.
They couldn't say no.
They could not say no. They could not say no to the feeling that somebody wanted them, somebody was reaching out to them. The thrill that we get, the neurochemical hit of constant connection is what we have now.
For multitasking?
We definitely get a high for multitasking.
Are our brains programmed to do 4 to 6 things at the same time?
No, there's really no such thing as multitasking. Studies show decisively that your behavior, your performance degrades for every new task you multitask. So when you add a new task, your performance degrades in all of the tasks you're doing. But there's a catch. You think you're doing better in each of the tasks you're doing. So multitasking, which we hyped as kind of, this is what this technology allowed for us, is actually the first thing that we need to address in order to do serious work.
Well, you've helped me to understand a puzzle, because in your earlier book, Life on the Screen, you were optimistic. You thought all of this technology was truly promising.
Well, I mean, I've had an evolution in my thinking.
And what was the critical factor in that?
Because in the early days of the internet, people went online, in those days anonymously, and could create identities online that were very different from the identities they had in the real. And people were experimenting with gender, with, the shy would be less shy, and people, as I studied them online, were really using online identity to work through questions of kind of experimenting, using the online world as a sort of identity workshop to play with questions of who they were and to experiment with being a little bit different. And I thought that was very exciting. What I did not see, call me not prescient, was that my idea of how we would be thinking about identity had a model of a person at a computer playing with identity. And then after you played with your identity at the computer, then you would get up from your computer, having experimented with identity, and you would go out into the world, and you would live your life having learned these lessons from your online identity. When the book was written, I looked around me, and there were already people in my environment using computers that they called the wearable computers.
Wearable?
Wearable computers. They had antenna, they had keyboards in their pockets, they had glasses that were their screens, and they were wearing the web on them. In other words, they looked very science fiction. They basically had a portable phone. They could be on the web. They were wearing it. They could be on the web all the time. They could be on the web all the time. And that meant once you had this device with you all the time, you didn't have this division of time at the computer or not with the computer. You had this always on you device, and you had the possibility of being always in this world of the web.
But what's wrong with that? I've asked that seriously
Well,
because,
that
E.M. Forster said only connect.
That changed everything because people then, the kids in my class who were looking down at their phones through the entire lecture included, the people in church who text during services, who text during funerals included, everyone is always having their attention divided between the world of the people we're with and this other reality. We now walk around with our heads down. I walked over here this morning, everybody is like this.
That's dangerous in New York City.
It's dangerous. There's even a New Yorker cover, I think, about a family, who are at the beach and their heads are in their phones. I mean, we are always equally in the world of the machine, in the world that's in the phone, and in the rest of the world.
That New York cover is a long way from the covers we used to see on the Saturday Evening Post, particularly Norman Rockwell's famous depiction of Thanksgiving dinner around the table,
right,
serving the turkey with all the kids and grandparents entering into the conversation.
Right. If I came into this conversation and just put my iPhone down and we started to talk, what we would discuss in this conversation would radically change. Because you feel, and you'd be right to feel, that I'm, partly waiting to be interrupted by all the things people experiences, emotions, connections that are here. And that changes what people will talk about, the amount of investment they'll make in the conversation, the nature of the degree of emotional content they will put into a conversation.
What is this doing to us as human beings? The fact that we're constantly...
It's keeping us more at the surface of things. I went to a dinner of a group of young people, constant interruption. Everybody has a phone, phones are going off constantly. The average teenage girl is interrupted once every 4 or 5 minutes by an incoming or an outgoing text. So 5 people out to dinner, it was a constant interruption. And I'll say to them, how do you feel about the interruptions? And they say, what interruptions? Because they experience these interruptions as connection. Things have gotten so bad that the culture is starting to present things that used to be dystopian as utopian. And my best example is dinner. There's an ad for Facebook, a dinner, a typical Norman Rockwell dinner of the type you were evoking. A big family, an extended family is at dinner. And you know this is going to be good because dinner is the thing that we all know protects against juvenile delinquency. People stay in school if they have dinner with their families. It protects against, everything bad, and it encourages everything good in the growing up of a child.
There are studies that confirm
Studies confirm dinner with your family. Just have dinner with your children. So we know this is going to be good. And this family is having dinner, and then all of a sudden, one of the members of the family, let's call her Auntie, starts to get boring. And a young girl, let's say a 19-year-old girl, would hit a boring bit.
And I had to buy a chicken.
And this girl is not going to take a boring bit, and she takes out her phone, and on her phone she goes to Facebook, and from her phone comes out snowball fights and football games and ballet things. All the things that are on her phone come out of her phone. And she's not at the dinner anymore. She's into this other world of Facebook. All the boring bits are gone. Facebook and all the things that are on her Facebook are now at the dinner, on the table. She's surrounded by this other world. She's smiling. She's happy. And so, essentially, Facebook has taken out an ad against conversation at family dinner. The big issue is whether or not we're moving to a culture, and we are, where people can no longer tolerate what I'm calling the boring bits.
The boring?
The boring bits of human conversation. I call it a flight from conversation because we become increasingly intolerant of the way in which we stumble and make mistakes and kind of have to backtrack, particularly when we're talking about things that are complicated and hard. And you have to sort of work with somebody and this is conversation. And children have to be taught, and this is why it's a gift to them to say, put down the device and let's talk. And so what concerns me as a developmental psychologist, watching children grow in this new world where being bored is something that never has to be tolerated for a moment. You can always go someplace where you're stimulated, is that people are losing that capacity. And that's very serious.
What is it about face-to-face conversation you think people don't like?
Well, I once asked a 16-year-old who was talking about how much he doesn't like conversation. He actually had just said to me, someday soon, but certainly not now, I'd like to learn how to have a conversation. And I said, what's wrong with conversation? And he said, it takes place in real time, and you can't control what you're going to say. And this is crucial for what digital technology has given us that has made conversation seem like something that we can avoid. Let's say the old kind of conversation, which is open-ended, which is that when you type or use digital media, you can edit, you can correct, you can get it right, you feel less vulnerable. I call it the Goldilocks effect.
Goldilocks?
The Goldilocks
Goldilocks
effect.
and the Three Bears?
Right. We want to be in touch with more and more people, carefully kept at bay. Not too close, not too far, just right. Edited, made with our communications, edited, made perfect, Goldilocks.
Everyone across the spectrum is talking about technology overuse, including comedians. I came across this moment on YouTube where Louis C.K. is talking about his own kid. Here it is.
My daughter was having a dance thing at her school. They had this big dance. Anyway, we all went, all the parents, and everybody's there, and everybody's got their phone. Every single parent. It was an amazing thing to watch because kids are dancing, and every parent is standing there like this. Every single person was blocking their vision of their actual child with their phone. And the kids, I went over by the stage, and the kids, there's people holding iPads in front of their faces. Why are you taping this? You're never going to watch it. You don't watch it, you just put it on Facebook. Here, you watch it.
It's a funny video, but he isn't sure he likes what's happening.
Well, I mean, I mean, there's so many things going on in this. I mean, we are living a kind of mediated existence where, you know, capturing the event in order to then post it really has come to seem normal. So I call it I share, therefore I am. I mean, it's kind of a way of living where you don't feel fully as though you're living if you haven't shared it in this new way. In other words, being. It's starting to be that sending is being. And I think that this has potentially a downside because you begin to not have as much a feeling of autonomy and sense of self if your way of thinking about yourself is so tied into sharing and texting and being enmeshed that way.
Walt Whitman should be around now, Song of Myself.
Right.
I mean, that's what
right.
society
No, it really is a different way of seeing the self. And again, I come back to the importance of solitude, the sense that people need to learn how to gather themselves and be alone and experience solitude, which is different from loneliness. Because the way things are now, you know, people think that loneliness is a problem that needs to be solved and that only technology can solve.
What about technology's ability to enable us to be mean and malicious from a distance without any possibility of retaliation? Why do people behave so differently on social media?
Because the face, the presence of another person inhibits the worst in us. And the fact that we can behave as behind a veil brings out the side where you feel as though you're disinhibited. There's no...
You're given permission.
You're given permission.
Yeah.
You're given permission. People behave cyberbullying. People behave as though they're not speaking to another human being.
Did you see the recent story about the 12-year-old girl who took her life after being
Yes.
bullying? Any take you can give us on that? Any insight you can share with us about how technology feeds something like that? She could have just turned off the phone, put down the phone.
No, she couldn't, because the phone has become her lifeline too, to her social world. I think that's sort of what we're saying, is that being part of her social world meant keeping on the phone.
It is crucial to their social lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's not just a matter of unplugging. If they unplug, they're unplugging from their universe.
Yes. And there are many teenagers who I've studied who will unplug for a while and then plug back in, because that is sort of where their social life is. That's where they know where the parties are. That's where they find out where things are happening.
So a couple of practical things that you would suggest to people about how to use this technology, Facebook and Twitter, social media, for happiness and meaning?
I have a lot of practical advice for parents, which is to create sacred spaces in your home.
By which you mean?
Places that are device-free. Kitchen, dining room, and the car. You can't introduce this idea when your child is 15, that the car is for chatting. From the very beginning, kitchen, dining room, and the car are places where we talk. And you explain to your child, this is important to me, we're a family, I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you.
Sherry Turkle, I appreciate your coming.
The Empire State Building is like really close to